The November frost clung to Ryan Carter's breath as he stared at the ape's cruel verdict. $8.47. His work-worn fingers trembled against the cold metal buttons, knowing every cent was earmarked for his 7-year-old's school lunches. His empty stomach twisted in familiar protest. Another skipped meal in a string of too many. Across Riverside Township's frost-slicked Main Street, beneath the skeletal branches of dying elms, a figure in a $1,000 suit crumpled onto a weathered park bench like discarded newspaper. Her silver Lexus sat silent as a tombstone behind her, its hood exhaling ghostly wisps of steam into the bitter air. When she lifted her head, Ryan saw something that stopped his heart. Hollow cheeks, designer makeup streaked with desperation, manicured fingers clutching at nothing. "My car's dead," she whispered, her voice barely threading through the wind. "I haven't eaten since Tuesday." It was Thursday. 2 strangers, $8. One impossible choice that would shatter everything they thought they knew about mercy, sacrifice, and the razor's edge between salvation and ruin. Ryan's conscience wrestled with reality as he watched the woman's shoulders shake. The $8 in his pocket felt heavier than a millstone. His daughter's face flashed through his mind. Bright eyes asking about art club again, not understanding why Daddy always said, "Maybe next month." The woman across the street looked up, and their eyes met for a fraction of a second. Something passed between them, unspoken and electric. Then she buried her face again, and Ryan made a choice that defied every survival instinct he'd developed since his wife died. "Ma'am!" he called out, his voice cutting through the November wind. "You need help!" The woman's head snapped up like a startled deer. Her eyes, rimmed with smeared mascara, searched his face with the wariness of someone who'd learned not to trust kindness. She opened her mouth, then closed it, as if the words themselves might betray her. Ryan crossed the icy street, each step feeling like he was walking away from his daughter's next meal, and toward something he couldn't name. The woman's breathing was shallow, rapid, desperate. "I don't—" she started, then stopped. Her voice cracked like thin ice. "I can't pay you back." Ryan knelt beside the bench, close enough to smell the faint scent of expensive perfume mixing with fear sweat. "When's the last time you ate?" The question hung in the frigid air between them like a challenge to the universe itself. "Tuesday night." The admission fell from her lips like a confession in church. Ryan felt something shift inside his chest, a door creaking open that he'd kept locked since the funeral bills started arriving. He thought about his wife's last words, scrawled in shaky handwriting on a piece of paper he still carried in his wallet. "Help someone when you can, even when you can't. Especially when you can't." His fingers found the $8, warm from his body heat, and he knew what he had to do. "Come on," he said, standing and extending his hand. "Let's get you something to eat." The woman stared at his outstretched hand like it was a lifeline thrown into churning waters. Her manicured fingers were so cold they felt like marble when she finally took his hand. She stood on unsteady legs, her expensive heels clicking against the frozen concrete like a broken metronome. Ryan noticed the way she tried to straighten her posture, to maintain some dignity even as her world crumbled around her. Pride was sometimes the last thing to die. "I'm Isabelle," she said, her voice steadier now, but still fragile as spun glass. "Ryan Carter." He guided her toward the small diner on the corner, its neon sign flickering like a lighthouse beacon. "And we're going to figure this out." Inside Murphy's diner, the warmth hit them like a physical embrace. The smell of coffee and bacon grease hung in the air like a promise of better times. Ryan chose a corner booth, away from curious eyes, and watched as Isabelle's hands shook while she studied the menu. Her eyes lingered on the prices, and he saw her shoulders sag with each dollar sign. When the waitress approached, a kind-faced woman with grey hair and tired eyes, Ryan ordered before Isabelle could speak. 2 breakfast specials, extra toast and coffee. Black for both. He caught the waitress's eye and nodded toward the kitchen. And make hers a double portion. Isabelle's eyes filled with tears that she blinked away before they could fall. You don't understand, she whispered. I used to eat in places that cost more than most people make in a week. Ryan leaned back in the cracked vinyl booth, his calloused hands wrapped around the warm coffee mug. What happened? The question opened floodgates Isabelle had been holding back for months. She told him about Meridian Financial, about the 23 years she'd spent climbing from entry-level analyst to vice president of risk assessment, about the corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, the company car, the 6-figure salary that felt like validation for every sacrifice she'd made. Her voice grew stronger as she spoke, as if telling the story was feeding her soul, even as her body remained hollow with hunger. I found something, she said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Transactions that didn't make sense. Money moving through shell companies, disappearing into accounts that shouldn't exist. Ryan watched her face change as she spoke, seeing glimpses of the woman she used to be. Confident, sharp, dangerous in a boardroom. But there was something else there too, something that made his chest tighten with recognition. It was the look of someone who'd tried to do the right thing and paid for it with everything they had. $200 million, Isabelle continued, her fingers tracing patterns on the scarred Formica table. Pension funds, retirement savings, college funds, all of it funneled through fake companies and offshore accounts. When I brought it to my supervisor, he told me to file it under pending review and forget about it. The food arrived then, steaming plates of eggs and bacon that made Isabelle's stomach growl audibly. She picked up her fork with the careful precision of someone who hadn't held one in days, and Ryan watched her take the first bite. Her eyes closed in something approaching ecstasy, and for a moment, the expensive suit and ruined makeup fell away, leaving just a hungry woman grateful for a warm meal. But you didn't forget, Ryan said. Isabelle shook her head, chewing slowly to make each bite last. I kept digging, found more accounts, more fake companies. The deeper I went, the worse it got. When I finally had enough evidence to present to the board, she paused, fork halfway to her mouth. They called it a fabrication, said I was suffering from workplace stress and needed psychiatric evaluation. Ryan felt anger building in his chest like steam in a pressure cooker. He'd seen enough corporate machinery in his factory days to know how it ground up people who got in the way. They fired you. Worse. Isabelle's laugh was bitter as black coffee. They destroyed me, froze my accounts pending internal investigation, spread rumors about my mental stability, had security escort me from the building like a criminal. Within a week I was unemployable. No one in the industry would touch me. The diner suddenly felt too small, the walls closing in with the weight of Isabelle's story. Ryan watched her eat with the focused intensity of someone who didn't know where the next meal would come from, and something crystallized in his mind. This wasn't just about a woman who'd fallen on hard times. This was about a system designed to crush anyone who threatened it, and a woman who'd chosen conscience over comfort. The car, he said. Company lease. They haven't reported it stolen yet, but they will. Isabelle's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. I figure I have maybe another day before they track it down. Ryan pushed his own plate toward her when she finished hers. Eat. I can't eat. His voice carried the authority of a man who'd made difficult decisions before. When's the last time you slept? Isabelle's hesitation answered for her. Dark circles under her eyes told a story of parking lots and rest stops, of curled up in a back seat trying to stay warm while the world spun on without her. Ryan felt something shift inside him, the same feeling he'd had the night his daughter was born, a fierce protectiveness that defied logic or self-preservation. "You can stay with us tonight," he heard himself saying. Isabelle's fork clattered against the plate. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." Ryan's voice was steady as bedrock. "I know you're honest enough to ruin your life rather than look the other way. I know you're strong enough to keep fighting even when you have nothing left to fight with. And I know what it's like to feel like the whole world's given up on you." The admission hung between them like a bridge neither had expected to find. Isabelle studied Ryan's face, searching for the catch, the angle, the hidden price that always came with charity. But all she saw was a man who understood what it meant to have the ground disappear beneath your feet and keep walking anyway. "Why?" The question was barely audible. Ryan thought about his wife's handwriting, about his daughter's bright eyes and empty lunch account, about the choice between doing right and doing safe. Because sometimes helping someone else is the only way to help yourself. They sat in silence while the diner hummed around them, other customers coming and going with their own small dramas and quiet desperation. Ryan watched Isabelle finish his breakfast, color slowly returning to her cheeks with each bite. The woman who'd collapsed on the park bench was gone, replaced by someone harder to define, someone who'd been broken but not defeated. "There's something else," Isabelle said finally. "Something I took when they fired me." Ryan's pulse quickened. "Evidence?" Isabelle nodded, her hand moving instinctively to her purse. USB drives, email chains, recorded conversations, everything they thought they buried. Her eyes met his across the table. "I was going to take it to the FBI, but I need somewhere safe first, somewhere they wouldn't think to look." The magnitude of what she was suggesting hit Ryan like a physical blow. He thought about his daughter, about the quiet life they'd built in the shadow of tragedy, about the danger that might follow this woman into their home. Then he thought about the thousands of people who'd lost their life savings while executives got rich, about the choice between safety and justice, between protecting what you have and protecting what's right. "Okay," he said. "Okay? You can stay with us, as long as you need." Isabelle's composure finally cracked. Tears she'd been holding back for months spilled over, cutting tracks through the remnants of her makeup. She didn't sob or wail. She cried the way Ryan had cried at his wife's funeral, silently and completely, as if something essential had finally broken free. The waitress appeared with the check, $7.25. Ryan placed his last $8 on the table and stood. "Keep the change," he said, though 75 cents wouldn't change anyone's life. But small kindnesses mattered, especially when they cost you everything. Outside, the November wind had picked up, sending dead leaves skittering across Main Street like scattered thoughts. Isabelle looked at her disabled Lexus with something approaching fondness, as if saying goodbye to a faithful friend. "She got me this far," she said. Ryan's apartment above Miller's Hardware was a monument to making do. One bedroom that he'd given to his daughter, a living room with a pull-out couch that had seen better decades, a kitchen barely large enough for 2 people. When they climbed the narrow stairs, Ryan felt suddenly conscious of every scuff mark, every patch of peeling paint, every sign that this was a place where people survived rather than lived. "It's not much," he said. "It's everything," Isabelle replied, and meant it. His daughter was at the kitchen table when they entered, 7 years old, with her mother's dark hair and her father's stubborn chin, bent over homework with the serious concentration that children bring to important tasks. She looked up when the door opened, her eyes moving from Ryan to Isabelle with the frank curiosity of a child who hadn't yet learned to hide her thoughts. "Daddy, who's this?" "This is Isabelle," Ryan said carefully. "She's going to stay with us for a while." His daughter considered this with the pragmatism of a child who'd learned early that life was unpredictable. "Are you poor like us?" "Yes," Isabelle said without hesitation. "I am." "That's okay. Daddy says being poor doesn't make you bad." The simplicity of childhood wisdom hit Isabelle like a revelation. She knelt beside the table, bringing herself to eye level with this small person who'd just offered acceptance without conditions. "What's your name?" "Emma." The girl studied Isabelle's face with the intensity of someone conducting an interview. "Why are your eyes all red?" "Because I've been sad for a while," Isabelle said honestly. "But I think I might be getting better." That night, Ryan gave Isabelle the pull-out couch and an extra blanket from his own bed. He lay awake listening to the sounds of another person in his space. Soft breathing, the occasional shift of springs, the subtle presence of someone who'd been alone too long. For the first time since his wife died, the apartment didn't feel empty. At 2 a.m, he heard muffled crying from the living room. Not the dramatic sobs of someone seeking attention, but the quiet weeping of someone who thought they were alone with their grief. Ryan lay still, respecting her privacy. But something inside him ached for this woman who'd sacrificed everything for strangers who would never know her name. Morning came grey and cold, with the promise of snow in the air. Ryan woke to the smell of coffee and something he hadn't experienced in over a year, someone else taking care of breakfast. He found Isabelle in his tiny kitchen, having somehow coaxed his ancient coffee maker into producing something that actually resembled coffee. She'd found eggs in his refrigerator and was making scrambled eggs with the careful efficiency of someone who knew her way around a kitchen, despite the expensive clothes she still wore. "You didn't have to. I wanted to." Isabelle's voice was steadier than it had been since he'd found her on the bench. "It's the least I can do." Emma emerged from the bedroom, rubbing sleep from her eyes, her dark hair a tangled halo around her small face. She stopped in the doorway, staring at Isabelle with the wide-eyed wonder of someone witnessing magic. "You made breakfast?" "I did," Isabelle smiled, and Ryan caught a glimpse of what she must have been like before the world collapsed around her. "I hope you like eggs." During breakfast, Emma chatted about school, about her teacher, Mrs. Henderson, about the art club she wanted to join but couldn't because it cost too much money. Isabelle listened with the focused attention of someone who'd forgotten what it was like to be around innocence, to hear problems that could be solved with crayons and construction paper instead of federal investigations and witness protection. "I like to draw too," Isabelle said, when Emma showed her a picture she'd made of their family. 3 stick figures holding hands under a smiling sun. "I used to dream about being an artist when I was your age." "What happened?" "I grew up." Isabelle's smile was tinged with regret. "Sometimes growing up means giving up dreams for more practical things." After Emma left for school, walking the 6 blocks with the independence of a child who'd learned self-reliance early, Ryan and Isabelle sat in his living room discussing practicalities. The Lexus would have to be abandoned, too easily tracked. Isabelle's credit cards were frozen, her bank accounts locked. She had exactly $12 in cash and a purse full of evidence that could topple one of Chicago's largest financial firms. "I need to contact the FBI," she said, pulling a small USB drive from her purse. "But I need to be smart about it. If Meridian has connections in law enforcement, they'll bury you before you can talk. Or worse." Ryan understood the implication. People who stole $200 million didn't hesitate to solve problems permanently. The woman sitting on his couch wasn't just a refugee from corporate America. She was a witness whose testimony could destroy powerful people. And powerful people didn't survive by leaving witnesses alive. "There's something else," Isabelle said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "I've been tracking news stories since they fired me. 3 other whistleblowers from financial firms in the past 2 years. All suffered accidents before they could testify." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Ryan felt the weight of invisible eyes watching his apartment, calculating risks and solutions. He thought about Emma walking to school alone, about the predictable routine that had kept them safe and anonymous. All of that was gone now, burned away the moment he'd chosen to help a stranger. "We need to move fast," he said. "I know a journalist," Isabelle replied. "Sarah Chen at the Chicago Tribune. She's been investigating financial corruption for years, and she's clean, no connections to Meridian or their clients. If I can get the evidence to her, they'll know it came from you. They already know. The question is whether I can get the story out before they stop me." Ryan watched her face as she spoke, seeing the determination that had driven her to risk everything in the first place. This wasn't a woman seeking revenge. This was someone who couldn't live with herself if she didn't try to protect the people whose money had been stolen. It was a kind of moral courage that Ryan recognized because he'd married someone who possessed it, someone who'd worked double shifts at the hospital because sick people needed care more than she needed sleep. "I'll drive you to Chicago," he said. "Ryan, no. This isn't your fight." "Yes, it is." His voice carried the finality of a man who'd made his decision and wouldn't be swayed. "The moment I helped you, it became my fight too." That afternoon, while Emma was at school, they drove to Riverside Township's small library. Isabelle used the public computer to send an encrypted email to Sarah Chen, requesting a meeting and hinting at the scope of the story she could provide. Within an hour, she had a response. Chen was interested and willing to meet that evening at a coffee shop in Lincoln Park. The drive to Chicago took 2 hours through increasingly heavy traffic, and Ryan's growing certainty that they were making a terrible mistake. His ancient pickup truck felt exposed on the interstate, vulnerable to anyone who might be watching. But when he looked at Isabelle in the passenger seat, studying the USB drives that contained evidence of massive fraud, he knew they were doing the only thing they could do. Sarah Chen was younger than Ryan had expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and the lean build of someone who survived on coffee and deadlines. She chose a corner table at the back of the coffee shop, away from windows and casual observers. When Isabelle showed her the first batch of documents, Chen's expression shifted from professional interest to barely contained excitement. "Jesus Christ," Chen whispered, scrolling through transaction records on her laptop. "This is bigger than Enron. You have records going back 5 years?" 7 years, Isabelle's voice was steady, despite the magnitude of what she was revealing. $218 million in pension funds, retirement accounts, and college savings, all funneled through shell companies and offshore accounts. Chen looked up from the screen, her journalist instincts warring with basic human decency. "You know what this means, right? The moment this story breaks, you'll be the most wanted woman in America. Meridian will come after you with everything they have. I know. The FBI will want to protect you, but witness protection means disappearing completely. New name, new life, no contact with anyone from your past. Forever." Ryan felt something cold settle in his stomach. He'd known this moment would come, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a way that planning couldn't. The woman sitting beside him would vanish into the federal system, become someone else, somewhere else. Their brief connection would be severed as cleanly as if she'd never existed. "How long do you need to verify the documents?" Isabelle asked. 72 hours minimum. This is complex financial fraud. I need to confirm account numbers, trace the shell companies, contact some of the victims to verify their losses. Chen closed her laptop and looked directly at Isabelle. "Where will you be while I'm working?" "Safe," Ryan said, before Isabelle could answer. "She'll be safe." They drove back to Riverside in tense silence, both aware that everything was about to change and neither willing to acknowledge it directly. Emma was waiting for them with a drawing she'd made at school, another family portrait. But this one included a fourth figure with yellow hair and a big smile. "That's Isabelle," she explained proudly. "She's part of our family now." Ryan caught Isabelle wiping away tears when she thought no one was looking. That night, they sat on the pull-out couch after Emma had gone to bed, sharing a bottle of cheap wine Ryan had been saving for a special occasion. The television played softly in the background, but neither was really watching. They were both thinking about tomorrow, about the choice between safety and justice, about the cost of doing what's right. "I never thanked you," Isabelle said quietly. "For what? For seeing me as human when I couldn't see it myself." She turned to face him, her eyes reflecting the blue light from the television. "That morning when you found me on the bench, I was planning to disappear. Not witness protection disappear, just disappear. I couldn't see any other way out." Ryan felt his chest tighten. "The $8 changed your mind?" "You changed my mind. You reminded me that there are still people who help strangers without expecting anything in return. People who choose kindness over self-preservation." Isabelle's smile was soft and sad. "You saved my life, Ryan Carter. Not just that morning. Every day since." "You saved mine too," Ryan said, surprised by his own honesty. "You reminded me what it means to fight for something bigger than just survival." They sat in comfortable silence, both aware that this might be their last quiet moment together. Tomorrow, Sarah Chen would start making calls, and the machinery of justice would begin grinding forward. Isabelle would become a federal witness, and Ryan would return to his life of quiet desperation in Riverside Township. Except now, he knew he was capable of more. "Whatever happens," Isabelle said, "I need you to know that these 3 days with you and Emma have been the happiest I've had since my mother died. For us too." "Will you tell Emma?" Isabelle's voice broke slightly. "Will you tell her that some people have to go away to help others? But that doesn't mean they stop caring?" Ryan nodded, not trusting his voice to remain steady. Outside, the November wind rattled the windows of his small apartment, and somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed its way toward someone else's emergency. But inside, 2 people who'd found each other in the wreckage of their broken lives sat together and pretended that morning would never come. At 3 a.m., Ryan's phone rang with the shrill insistence of bad news. Sarah Chen's voice was tight with controlled panic. "They know. Somehow they know about our meeting. My editor got a call tonight. Someone claiming Isabelle is mentally unstable, making up stories to get revenge on former employers. They're trying to discredit her before the story even breaks." Ryan felt ice water replace the blood in his veins. "How long do we have?" "Hours, maybe. There are cars watching my apartment, and I think I'm being followed. Can you get her to the FBI field office? I'll meet you there with what I've verified so far." "How much have you verified?" "Enough. Ryan, this story is going to destroy Meridian Financial and probably bring down a dozen other firms. But Isabelle needs federal protection now, tonight." Ryan woke Isabelle and explained the situation in whispers while she threw her few belongings into a bag. Emma woke during the commotion, rubbing her eyes and asking why everyone was whispering. Ryan knelt beside his daughter's bed, searching for words that would explain why their brief family was about to be torn apart. "Isabelle has to go help some people who are in trouble," he said finally. "Like a superhero, but in real life. Will she come back?" Ryan glanced at Isabelle, who was standing in the doorway with tears streaming down her face. "I don't know, sweetheart, but she wants you to know that she loves you very much, and that you helped her remember how to be brave." Emma considered this with the seriousness of a child processing adult complications. Then she got out of bed and wrapped her small arms around Isabelle's waist, holding tight, as if she could prevent the inevitable through sheer force of will. "Be careful," Emma whispered, "and remember that you're part of our family forever." The FBI field office in Chicago was a fortress of glass and steel that seemed to swallow people whole. Agent Torres met them in the parking garage at 4:30 in the morning, his badge glinting under fluorescent lights that cast everything in shades of grey. He was younger than Ryan had expected, with the lean intensity of someone who'd seen too much corruption and not enough justice. "Ms. Sterling," Torres said, extending his hand. "I'm Agent Torres. We've been hoping you'd come in." "You know who I am?" "We've been investigating Meridian for 2 years. Your evidence is exactly what we need to build a solid case." Torres looked at Ryan with frank curiosity. "Mr. Carter, we appreciate what you've done to help, but from this point forward, we need to handle Ms. Sterling's protection." Ryan understood the dismissal for what it was, a polite but firm removal from a federal investigation. He turned to Isabelle, searching for words that would encompass everything he felt and everything he couldn't say. "This isn't goodbye," she said, reading his thoughts. "Isn't it?" Isabelle looked at Agent Torres, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "The trial will probably last 6 months. After that—" She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "After that, you disappear. After that, I get to live with the knowledge that I did the right thing. Because of you." Isabelle's voice was strong despite the tears. "You gave me the courage to be better than I was." Ryan wanted to tell her that she'd done the same for him, that these 3 days had reminded him who he used to be before grief and desperation wore him down to survival instinct. Instead, he pulled her into a hug that lasted exactly as long as Agent Torres's patience would allow. "Take care of yourself, Isabelle Sterling. Take care of Emma. And Ryan." She pulled back to look into his eyes. "Use that courage I know you have. Build something better." Agent Torres cleared his throat, and the moment shattered like glass hitting concrete. Isabelle gathered her purse and the USB drives that contained enough evidence to topple a financial empire. She walked toward the elevator without looking back, her posture straight and determined, despite everything she was leaving behind. Ryan drove home through the pre-dawn darkness, his ancient pickup truck rattling along empty highways while the radio played love songs that felt like mockery. By the time he reached Riverside Township, the sun was painting the eastern sky in shades of amber and rose, and Emma was awake and asking where Isabelle had gone. "She went to help those people," Ryan said, making coffee with hands that shook more than they should have. "Like we talked about." "The superhero thing?" "Yeah, sweetheart, the superhero thing." 3 weeks later, the Chicago Tribune broke the biggest financial scandal since the 2008 housing crisis. Sarah Chen's investigation, backed by Isabelle's evidence and federal resources, revealed a network of fraud that had stolen over $400 million from pension funds across the Midwest. Meridian Financial's stock price collapsed overnight, and 17 executives were arrested before the weekend. Ryan read the coverage on the library computer, searching between the lines for any mention of Isabelle. She was referred to only as a protected federal witness, but he could see her courage in every revelation, her determination in every charge filed against the people who'd tried to destroy her. The article mentioned that pension funds would be restored, that thousands of retirees would get their money back, that college funds would be returned to families who'd given up hope. Ryan thought about $8 and a hungry woman on a park bench, about the ripple effects of choosing kindness over self-preservation. 6 months later, an envelope arrived with no return address. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a note written in handwriting he recognized. "For Emma's art supplies, and whatever dreams come next. You taught me that helping one person can change everything. Now help someone else. I." Ryan stared at the check for a long time, thinking about federal witness protection and new identities, about a woman who'd remembered him despite having to forget everything else. Then he thought about business school and the cooperative he'd been planning, about the other laid-off factory workers who could build something together instead of just surviving alone. That afternoon, he enrolled in night classes at the community college. Emma cheered when he told her, and that evening she drew another picture, this one showing her father in graduation cap and gown, with "Proud of Daddy" written in crooked letters across the top. 2 years passed before Ryan saw Isabelle again, though he didn't recognize her at first. She was standing at the back of a conference room in Springfield, where he was presenting his cooperative model to a gathering of small business owners. Her hair was shorter and darker, her clothes more casual, but when she smiled, he knew exactly who she was. After his presentation, she approached with the careful steps of someone who'd learned to be cautious about connections. "That was impressive, Mr. Carter." "Ms. Walsh. Jennifer Walsh." The name felt rehearsed, practiced. "I represent a foundation interested in funding cooperative development projects." They talked for 20 minutes about business plans and community development, dancing around the truth while other conference attendees milled around them. Finally, Jennifer Walsh handed him her card and said, "We should discuss this further. Are you free for dinner?" Over pasta at a quiet restaurant, the careful facades crumbled. Jennifer Walsh was Isabelle Sterling, was someone new entirely. A woman who'd been legally dead for 2 years, but had found a way to keep living. She told him about the trial, about testifying against former colleagues who'd tried to have her killed, about the satisfaction of watching them led away in handcuffs. "Meridian doesn't exist anymore," she said, twirling linguine around her fork with the precise movements of someone who'd relearned everything, including how to eat in public. "The executives are serving federal time, and the pension funds have been restored. $463 million returned to people who thought they'd lost everything. Because of you. Because of us. Because you gave me $8 and reminded me that decent people still exist." Ryan studied her face, searching for traces of the desperate woman he'd found on a park bench. She was there, beneath the careful reconstruction, but stronger now, tempered by fire and federal protection into something that could bend without breaking. "The foundation," he said, "uses settlement money from the Meridian case to help people rebuild after corporate fraud. We're particularly interested in cooperative business models." Jennifer's smile was mischievous. "Turns out, helping people help themselves is more satisfying than anything I did in that corner office." "We? I have partners now. Other whistleblowers, former federal prosecutors, journalists who got tired of just writing about problems instead of solving them." She leaned forward conspiratorially. "We'd like to invest $2 million in expanding your cooperative model. Interested?" Ryan thought about $8 and impossible choices, about the distance between survival and purpose, about a 7-year-old girl who'd once drawn a stranger into her family portrait. What would Emma say? She'd say her daddy is brave enough to help other people build better lives. "You remember her." "I remember everything." Jennifer's voice grew soft. "She sent me a drawing once, through the federal marshals. A picture of 3 people holding hands with 'We miss you' written at the bottom. It's been on my refrigerator for 2 years. She's 9 now, still drawing, still asking about art school." "The foundation has an education fund." "Of course it does." They talked until the restaurant closed, 2 people who'd saved each other discussing the future they were going to build together. When they finally parted ways, Ryan felt something he hadn't experienced since the morning he'd withdrawn his last $8. The certainty that tomorrow held possibilities instead of just problems. 5 years later, the Carter Way cooperative model operated in 47 towns across 8 states. Ryan stood before a congressional subcommittee, testifying about community-based economic development, while Jennifer Walsh watched from the gallery. His daughter Emma, now 14 and preparing for art school, sat beside Jennifer with a sketch pad, Drawing the moment, her father explained to senators how helping strangers could rebuild entire communities. After the hearing, they walked together through the Capitol building's marble corridors, an unlikely family bound together by crisis and choice. Emma had grown tall and confident, her artwork filling the walls of Ryan's office and several local galleries. Jennifer had become someone new entirely, using her second chance to build the kind of life her first incarnation never could have imagined. "Do you ever regret it?" Emma asked Jennifer as they stood on the Capitol steps, watching Washington's elaborate dance of power and politics. "Giving up your old life?" Jennifer considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "I regret not doing it sooner," she said finally. "Your father taught me that the most important thing isn't what you have. It's what you're willing to give up to do what's right." Ryan watched his daughter process this wisdom with the thoughtful intensity of someone who'd inherited her parents' moral compass. Then Emma grinned and pulled out her latest drawing, a portrait of 3 people building something together, with "Family chooses each other" written across the top in careful letters. "Besides," Jennifer added, looking at the drawing, "I didn't give up my old life. I traded it for something better." As they walked toward the future they were still building together, Ryan thought about $8 and park benches, about the moment when helping a stranger became helping himself. Behind them, the Capitol dome gleamed in the afternoon sun, and somewhere in America, people were learning that cooperation worked better than competition, that communities could be built on kindness instead of exploitation. The ripples were still spreading outward, touching lives they'd never meet, creating possibilities they'd never imagined. It had started with $8 and a choice between safety and compassion. It would end wherever people decided that helping each other was more important than helping themselves, which was to say, it would never end at all.